The games that I grew up with are what I consider to be the best games of all time, like I'm sure it is with a lot of other people. There's comfort in going back to those titles because it brings us back to a time when things were easier. But even amongst the vast titles of games that I've played, I end up finding most comfort in Generation 2 of Pokemon. Like most of the kids my age, I grew up watching the Pokemon anime and collecting the cards. But growing up in a strict household that didn't really believe in video games, I never got to own my own copy of the Pokemon games. That is until I met a good buddy of mine, Eric. Although Eric was 2 years older than I was, our families were incredibly close, so we saw each other a lot. And like most of the kids that age, we were all obsessed with Pokemon, and he was shocked to find out that I didn't own any of the games. Out of his goodwill, he ended up giving me his old copy of Pokemon Gold, as he had already gotten the superior version, Pokemon Crystal, and even traded me a few strong Pokemon for me to use, though it didn't really help as Zapdos never really listened to what I had to say since I lacked the gym badges. But because this was my first ever Pokemon game, I ended up pouring a ton of love into this cartridge. I remember training up so many of my Pokemon to level 100 by constantly rematching the Elite Four over and over again, and it was honestly the most fun I've ever had as a kid. While unfortunately the data got wiped because of how old the cartridge is, I still own my copy of Pokemon Gold that Eric had given me almost a decade and a half ago, and I still consider it to be one of my most treasured possessions to this day. This experience with Pokemon Gold was what I think really cemented my love for Generation 2. But when looking back at what my love for the game is, there's another title that comes to mind that solidified these games as one of my favorites of all time: Pokemon Heart Gold. I actually wasn't able to get a copy of Heart Gold at the time because, again, I grew up with parents that didn't really believe in video games. It was absolutely devastating as I had kept up with Generation 2 remake news for God knows how long, but this is where my friend Peter had come in clutch. Peter owned a copy of Heart Gold, but because he knew how much I loved that generation, he ended up giving me his copy of it. This was genuinely shocking, as the game at the time was still relatively new, but he insisted that I take it. I also still own the copy of Heart Gold that he gave me to this day, and I promised him that I would name my starter Cyndaquil after him, Slade, his b-boy name at the time. And in an odd way, it stuck. I've named almost every Cyndaquil afterwards Slade in honor of the memory that Peter and I had shared together. And much like the original Pokemon Gold file, I poured a ton of love into this game as well, and I remember within a week the game was done and over, all with my buddy Slade the Typhlosion next to me. But when I look back at why I love Generation 2 of Pokemon and its subsequent remakes, I can't help but think a lot of the factors that played into me enjoying this particular generation was everything that happened outside the game and never really what happened inside the game. Pokemon Gold to me is a token of friendship between Eric and I, and my fondest memories of playing that game was me always trying to catch up to the immaculate trainer that Eric was to me at the time. And Pokemon Heart Gold was a token of friendship that Peter and I had shared. Peter had passed away 4 years ago. He was my best friend as we learned how to dance together, ditched class together, and why I still have the title AIK after my name even after the many years of our crew disbanding. It's oftentimes hard to accept that you're gone, but I make these videos because I know you believed in me and my creative drive. And while you've changed your b-boy name over and over again as time went on before you settled with b-boy Peanuts, it brings me a lot of comfort when I open the game and see that Slade the Typhlosion is still there. And for a brief moment in time, I'm back in the classroom telling you about how you carried me through the Elite Four. Rest in power, my good friend Peter Peanuts Kim.